into prison today for that. Robbery and pawning stolen trousers. Um, Trespass on a potato garden. I presume they were suspicious that they was going to steal potatoes. Picking pockets in a chapel. I thought that was quite an interesting one. Feloniously milking a cow. Breach of the excise laws. Stealing turnips again. It was kind of common. Trespass on a mountain. And there's a short report there on that. Early 1800 data in Ireland was very patchy, and before 1820 there wasn't that much of it there. Kilmacabey Parish, which is where uh, people, Lep, Glandorian Hall, they were all in Kilmacabey Parish. The records only are available from 1832, so we're a bit stuck to go back prior to that. The father's name, and certainly the mother's name, they were not generally included in the marriage of a child. So you found the marriage of Mary Donovan, but you didn't know really for sure in a lot of cases if it was the Mary. Addresses were not often included. In Kilmacabey, we're lucky enough that a lot of them were. And if a child died quite young, they often used the same name again for the next child, male or female. That so that can cause its own bit of confusions. Very common names like McCarthy, Donovan, Sullivan, Manny, and Daly makes it quite challenging. And as we saw earlier, the common names Mary and John and these. Just I think there's someone telling me shut up. I'm nearly finished anyway. You'd be glad to know. Frequency of ages being used in 1901 and 1911 census in Ireland. Um, you can see these unusually high peaks for 30, 40, 50 and 60 age. So someone like you had a kind of a trend running down here for both 1901 and 1911, but at the 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70, a bit more, even with 80, and you can see with the fives as well here. There were peaks, we often say that people were unsure of their ages, but you can certainly see in 1901, they were very unsure in this era, and they tended to use the multiples of 10 as peaks, not as prominent as the red ones in 1901, but that is what appeared on the census. But I mean, obviously people were unsure of their ages, so it makes it much more challenging when you're trying to deal with records and what age were they, because that 60 in that case, like they were spread out over some 10 years either side. Not a Donovan, you'd say they're incorrect. They're my great-grandparents on my father's mother's side. But some of the challenges again, that's my grandmother, Margaret. Margaret Donovan. The These two, her older sisters, Mary Ann and Elizabeth, came to the States and have ancestors in Boston whom we met. But John Daly from Castle Donovan, in fact, he died, and rather than being evicted, as would happen from the farm, Catherine Burke, now Mrs. Daly, she married a Jeremiah Donovan from Mola Trahan, which is close to Revoler in Lep, and had 5 Donovan children. That's all perfectly straightforward until 2 of our Donovan ancestors came along and married Patrick Donovan and Jeremiah. James Donovan married my grandmother Margaret, and his brother married Bridget Donovan. So, who's Joe Donovan's father, who was the fellow in the wheelchair there earlier. So what I'm saying is, you have situations that the widow would be evicted in a lot of cases, and it happened on my mother's side, when the husband died because it was felt the widow couldn't run the farm, and they got evicted. And but when you have a situation where he died, she married a Donovan, and 2 Donovan brothers from our Donovan side married the girl. So Certainly, I think I'm going over time at this stage, so thanks. Very disappointing. You must have all been asleep because no one asked any question.
I have a question.
Yeah, I can't answer probably. Oh, yeah, Nita did, sorry, yeah.
Castle Donovan, is that the name of a town as well as the name of the castle, or were those people living in Castle Donovan?
Our ancestors were not living in Castle Donovan, our immediate ones, because they couldn't afford to live there. It was gone. The Donovans lived in Castle Donovan. Obviously, it's a name of a townland, and it's a very small townland, relatively speaking. Because I was saying they're averaging probably around 400 to 500 acres. Castle Donovan, from memory, is something like 178 acres, which is very small. A difficulty with Castle Donovan, as you raised the question, is the it's kind of a global name, we'll call it. That, like Clearwater here, is covering many. Well, I don't know what I'm talking about really, but probably a number of what would I say, districts or areas or something like that, and they're all under Clearwater. While Castle Donovan was a townland, it to this day we'll all talk about, and when I was working I would be talking about as well, I'm going to Castle Donovan, but I might not be going to actually Castle Donovan townland, but I'd be going to one of the ones near it. But Drina, which I mentioned earlier, there was a large cooperative creamery there, and they had a branch where they would collect the milk from the whole Castle Donovan district north of Drumleague, and that was Castle Donovan Creamery, but it wasn't in Castle Donovan townland at all. It was a name, I suppose, because of the castle and all that. It covered a number of townlands in the area. So, and later we have to get Anita's meaning of the crest.
No, you looked it up. It was the snake was for wisdom, the sword was for courage. The green was for peace, the white was for strength. I don't know. I think that was
You've got a bit of it anyway, Anita.
well, that's what I did. That's how I know.
So Frank, you showed a church, you said that many Donovans would have been baptized there.
Yeah.
Was that a Catholic church or
Yeah.
was it a Protestant church?
Yeah, Catholic Church.
Were they Donovans like way back in?
Well,
or,
they wouldn't.
Catholic is the word I wanted to interject in that sentence there. Were they Catholics way back from ages ago?
They were. I mean, yeah. I think all the Donovans that I'm aware of back to probably the 1700s, that our ancestors were all Roman Catholics.
So they would have had to be from the 1700s.
Yeah, and the 1841 there were when Candy's ancestor John Donovan married Catherine Donovan, another double name. They married in that church in 1841 and had children baptised there, some 5 or 6 of them from memory, before they moved to Wales. My ancestors and your Jeremiah Donovan, there were a number of his children baptized. Maybe most of them would have been in the old church. I'll have to look it up and let you know. I've no internet here. We'll have a look at Trish's machine, but laptop there in a minute. Yeah, Jeremiah Donovan, from whom you're descended, at least I'd say 2 of his children were baptized in that church. Maybe more, not certain, but we'll see. But anyway, yeah. Look, we can have a look at it just in a minute. Yeah, I'll go around there in a minute. Grandson.
Is the church still there?
Oh yeah, yeah, still.
The church in
Drina, still there. Yeah.
That's where my great-great-grandparents.
Not in the church that's there. That was only built in 1952. the church in Drina is gone. Am I right in that, Angela?
Is that at the old cemetery?
That was a Protestant church, wasn't it?
The one that we visited?
Yeah, was it? I think yeah, but Square Tower. Um, that was a Protestant, huh? There is a description, just to clarify something there that you might knock across. In 1837, there was the Lewis, LEWIS, Topographical Survey of Ireland. And this fella gave a verbal description, and it's interesting, of a lot of places, including Lip and Drina in Ireland. And when there's a good enough description of churches there, but the churches are Church of Ireland that he refers to, and there's a sentence or two on the Roman Catholic Church. But, which is fine, other than just to say, when you look at it initially, you'd kind of be saying, that's not the Catholic Church that was there, but he's actually referring to the Church of Ireland that was there, which, just to be aware that not to jump to conclusions again. Yep.
Did you find any of our people or your people in the Drina records, church records?
Oh, yeah. And do you remember when you and I went to, in Drina, I was going to refer to when we went to Kilmackabee Church. In Drina Church, yeah, but on my side, I think all yours kind of are in Kilmackabee.
I think all of mine are in Kilmackabee, but it was right at the time when they were moving up to Drina, and I don't know when Drina started.
Yeah, but you see, Revoler, Townland is in Kilmackabee Church.
They're right across the road from Drina.
Yes, and also adjacent to Roscarbery Parish, because Revoler is in Kilmackabee. Come to the next crossroads, which is 200 or 300 yards, and you're into going north. You're into Drumaleague Parish, which includes Drina, and going southwest, southeast. Sorry, you're into Roscarbery Church Parish. So, like Revoler is in Kilmackabee Parish, but it's so close to the other two parishes that it's there was a certain amount of people move from one to the other depending on getting married or whatever it was, but I think all of yours are certainly, they were in Kilmackabee Parish and baptised there before they moved to Wales.
Go up to Drina.
Oh yeah.
From Kimor? Or
Um,
they were Kimor first, and then they were Revoler,
I
and
think-
then where did your people go?
Oh, they started scattering after that. They went into Drumaleague Parish, but I mean, they went to Bandon and God knows where. Here to the States as well.
So no gold mines anywhere.
No. Oh, by the way, are those, as a matter of interest, those criminal things that I was referring to, you can actually safely use all of those for any of the common names. They were not all Donovans. But any of the Daly, McCarthy, Sullivans, they all featured with those kind of names. So if you want to kind of talk to anyone about their ancestors being criminals, you're pretty safe. There is no Isaac there. You're safe, Candy. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Just one other item, now that I'm finished, but I'm not finished.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I've two charts there that are covering the Michael Jeremiah and Trisha's John Donovan. I didn't do Candy's. I have it partly done, but it's going to be a mile long. There's so many in it, and there's a lot. It's not complete, but there are names missing off of that, and it will be an opportunity to have people tell me what's missing or what's wrong, or the links to the website the Remembrance Garden pages there. If you have a look at that and tell me if of any additions, corrections, or whatever should be, I would
Would you like
appreciate.
more pictures, remembrance pictures?
Yeah, we'll talk about that later.
We need more people.
Right, well, I'm happy
Picture.
enough. I'd be delighted to kind of avail of any stuff that's given to me and add it in that you think can be added in, because I suppose my whole objective with doing family history is to try and have it as accurate as possible, and kind of that it would be a good reference into the future rather than for someone like me, and that all the young people here would be able to use the information in whatever way they wish into the future, and that it would be kind of accurate rather than guessing anything like that. And so any suggested changes or whatever, I'd appreciate it. Or any additions. And if anyone wants a copy of this, let us know and we'll get it to you tonight.
Angela Donovan was going to talk to us a little bit about the Easter Rising, which is the 100th anniversary of the Easter Rising in Ireland. That'd be great. She was going to give us a little history.
I don't think so.
Are you going to get speaker?
Frank, would you open the first panel for me, please? Sorry, I'll slip up.
Did you use the memory card?
No, not yet.
Are you going?
I don't know. I hope not.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Okay. Do I need that?
Yes, sir, if you want to speak on camera.
Hmm?
If you want to speak on camera, yeah.
Oh, I see.
You're still going, right?
Am I on? All right. Hello, folks. I'm just going to say a few words on the 1916 Rising. Can you hear me or can you not? Yeah. Okay, because I feel I'm talking very low. I wished I had a PowerPoint presentation, but I don't have. But I have a bit of data that I'll refer to on the laptop there if he manages to find it. You have it? Hooray. The 1916 Rising, obviously, the centenary is being commemorated this year in Ireland. In fact, in Ireland, we're into the decade of centenaries from 1913 to 1923, between the War of 1916 Rising. But just going back, we had the First World War starting in 1914 to 1918, and Ireland was involved, Irish people were involved in that anyway, and the War of Independence and the Civil War. The War of Independence in Ireland is sometimes called the Anglo-Irish War. But I'm just talking about the 1916 Rising, and I'm finding something here. Oh God, I'm too short-sighted for that. Anyhow, what it was, sorry, Frank, if you could get the first panel first. What led up to the Irish people rising up against the Crown in 1916? It was something that started, I think, back in the mid-1700s. We had in Europe, and I think it spread to America, the Age of Enlightenment. Did anyone hear that?
Hasn't hit here yet.
Hasn't hit here yet? Oh dear, I think American literature was influenced by it anyway. It was where people began to realise that what they're born into is not necessarily where they stay for life. They can improve their lot. The achievements of mankind can be recognised and can raise their status or raise their circumstances, improve their lot. And that was more an issue in mainland Europe, but it eventually triggered over into the little island of Ireland. And the Irish people began to think, hey, do you know what? We're actually a group in ourselves. We don't have to be dominated by England. We don't have to be speaking the English language and abandoning our own language, etc., etc. The religion that was was all Ireland, was the Roman Catholic, and that had been practically wiped out. Not fully, they fought that one very much. But they, how do I go down here? Oh, yeah. Yeah. A number of things. In 1913, a couple of years before 16, there was a few beginnings. And they led to major events in Irish history after that. On the 1st of November, 1913, the North began. That was an article by Owen MacNeill. He was a famous historian in University College Dublin. And he was a prominent member of the Gaelic League. So he wrote that as a heading in one of the Gaelic League's publications at the time. On the 19th of November, the Irish Citizens' Army was established, or founded in Dublin, which was mainly an army to defend workers if they went on strike or rebelled in any way against their employer, because they had an experience in 1913 and they found they were in a poorly represented, or not represented at all. And later in November, the Irish Volunteers were established by prominent nationalists. Now, what were the Irish Volunteers? They were, I would describe them as soldiers in training. They had no skills at all in fighting or anything, but they decided to get set up to be ready to attack the powers that be. Now, prior to that, that was all in 1 month in 1913. But prior to that, there was a number of events that led to a revival of all things Irish. The Gaelic revival. It was a late 19th century national revival of the Irish language and Irish Gaelic culture, which would have included folklore, sports, music, arts, etc. And the Gaelic Athletic Association, that was founded in 1884. That was one, supporting or encouraging Irish sport, hurling, football. That spread across the globe, really. I think he could tell me more about GAA in America. There's some clubs anyway. Conran na Gaeilge, that's Gaelic language, Irish language. The Gaelic League, it was called. That was founded mainly to revive the Irish language. The Irish language was still spoken by people in remote parts of Ireland, but not in the main cities. They had drifted over to the English language for commercial reasons and other reasons. So they thought, we shouldn't lose our language. Let's go and try and revive it, bring it back. And Douglas Hyde was the first president there. Padraig Pearse, that's a name you may have heard of with 1916. He was an important Irish writer. And the Lady Gregory, I don't know if you've heard of her in literature and that. She supported the Irish literary revival together with William Butler Yeats, an Irish poet. I'm not sure if his name is familiar here. Some of you are nodding anyway. They were, and Edward Martin, they were co-founders of the Irish Literary Theatre. Later, the Abbey Theatre in Dublin, still there. Now, on the political front, things were also happening. And the Land League was formed in 1879. Charles Stewart Parnell, he was elected in 1875, and he joined the Home Rule Party, led by Isaac Butt. But Parnell got some support for Home Rule. Home Rule meant that the Irish people would govern themselves rather than being governed by Britain, which they were at this stage. So there was some support for it, but it went to a vote 4 times in the House of Parliament in England before it was actually passed. And there's a bit of collusion, I suppose, on the 4th time in 1914. The Protestants who were at this stage living in Ulster, they didn't want it. They wanted to stay with England. They had been of the English culture. They had come from England. They were planted in, or come from Scotland as well, planted in Ulster. The native Irish people were driven out and get lost wherever you want to go. So they didn't want it, but it was passed, and then England found itself involved in the war in Europe, as they would call it. We now refer to it as the First World War. And they put back the administration of that act. Wait until the war is over, which was probably going to be anticipated to be about 1 year. It lasted 4 years. So then nationalists, those with living in Ireland with the idea that we should be a nation on our own, they were getting a bit, fed up with all of this. We've been promised and it's not coming. And they decided, you know what? This is a good time. England is stretched to the limit because of what was going on in the war in Europe, and all her troops and she were being killed, and she needed more troops, etc., etc. Of course, a lot of Irish were drafted in too. That had its own repercussions. But they decided, we'll have a go. We'll plan an uprising for 1916. They started planning it in 1915. And they looked for support from the Germans, who were anti-English anyway. So that support started here in America. There was a guy, Roger Casement, who had been working in the consular service for England and had retired because of some minor injury. He was here in America when the First World War broke out, and he approached a German ambassador here, and he paved the way for him. Roger Casement went over to Germany and got some arms. They were to be shipped, if I could say shipped, secretly to Ireland, to West Kerry. They were going to be landed there. They wouldn't bring them into a main port because that would be a bit visible. And it was all, they were to come in at Easter 1916. In fact, on Good Friday, that's 2 days before Easter Sunday, they were to come into West Kerry. And Roger Casement got the Germans to transport himself back in a separate boat. He came in a submarine to West Kerry, which was disguised as the odd Norse. It was Norse, pretending to be Norse registered boat. But the Irish were not very efficient. And Roger Casement landed in West Kerry, and he hadn't his feet firmly on the ground when he was captured and executed as later in England. And the ship, or the boat, was captured as well, and they wouldn't let the English take the arms. So the ship was following the British naval vessel from West Kerry into Cork Harbour, and they scuttled the ship rather than the arms went to the floor of the sea rather than letting England have it anyway. So that's Roger Casement actually felt there should not be a rising because he didn't get enough arms. He got a sizable quantity, but not enough. In the meantime, you had these Irish volunteers that were started in 1913. They were training away and all that and getting organised for this rising. And they were kind of scattered around the country, not as plentiful as they should be, but any grouping that was, they were organised to mobilise on Easter Sunday, 1916. And even in Bantry, where Frank and I live, there was a group of volunteers, and they were mobilised. They went to the next village, which was only about 7 miles away, Kelkil. Another group from Ballingeary were mobilised, and they came to meet the Bantry ones in Kelkil. And last Sunday, we had a commemoration of that. They were told to bring 1 day's provisions with them. In some cases, they were told to bring a blanket as well. Now, a blanket might be, we think of it for sleeping. A blanket was a great security from the shotguns as well. Some of you may know that a bullet won't go through a blanket. I think they were talking about woolen blankets at the time, provided you don't hold, if you just let it hang, you don't hold it taut at the end. They were the kind of things some of us learned when we were kids. survival lessons. Yes.
Hear about that. Yeah. We're gonna have to come back to that.
Come back to the blanket.
Yeah, come back to how you learned that. What kind of survival lessons you had to come learn.
Well, I'm joking about survival. I heard it from my father. He made sure we knew that, just in case that.
He was trying to shoot you with shotgun.
Just in case it ever happens, you know. It wasn't that far.
The American kids that's what I'm saying. They don't teach that to the American kids.
I don't think the Irish kids of today are hearing that either. In fact, they would hardly know what a blanket is because they use duvets. Yeah. But, you know, that was interesting. The mobilisation took place on Easter Sunday in different parts of the country. The head guy, Owen McNeill, who was in charge of the volunteers for the whole country, was not in favour of an uprising at all. And many of them knew that, so they didn't tell him until the evening before. And the only way he had of passing a word out to all the whole country, small as it may be, was to put a note on Sunday's paper. And we have a copy of that. I don't have it with me. He put a note on that all members of volunteers must adhere to this notice, and you know, it was countermanding the order that they were given. So most people did not do anything more than, like in Bantry, they travelled to the next village, they met the other company, they waited around, and eventually word came, a guy on a motorbike arrived saying, lads, there's nothing happening, you can go home. So home they went. So it was kind of a non-event in a lot of places. But in Dublin, a certain number of the volunteers who were really eager to have a go at the enemy, as they would call them, the British, they did mobilise on Easter Monday, and they were very poorly prepared. They took over some of the main buildings in Dublin, and they many people were killed. They occupied the GPO, the main post office in Dublin. That was where the main activity was. And but there was fighting in different parts of the city. Several people killed. Several. There was, I think, 485 people were killed as a direct result of the rebellion altogether. And of that, there was 116 British soldiers, 77 insurgents, that's the people actively involved, and 23 members of the police force. But there were 38 children, civilians, who were killed accidentally. It was during holiday time, Easter Monday, and they were out and they were trying to get back to their home, and trouble had broken out on the street and things like that. So yeah, there was quite a lot. After the week, there was one man who was a native of Lepp and Drina, where your ancestors comes from. He was Hurley, Sean Hurley, and I have. Sorry? I think so.
His grandmother, and she is of Sean Hurley.
Sean Hurley.
Not a relative of ours, despite sorry, Angela, but there is a suspicion that there's a connection between Donovan and Hurley, not his Sean Hurley.
Oh, yeah.
Worked with a Hurley lady, but she assures me, and she's worked with Sean Hurley for a couple of reasons. She said he is not related to us. The Donovan is back. Well, she doesn't think that we are related at all.
So anyway, they occupied the. Thanks, Frank, for that. He was a neighbour of some of your ancestors, I suppose. And there was a people from all over the country involved. But
Just say there is a website for him.
Oh.
SeanandSeanHurley.com. All right.
Right.
And there's a commemoration in Greene on the 1st or 2nd of May. Just can send it around there. That's
Yeah, I think he's the guy who said when he was leaving some of his native people, "Tell my mammy I died for Ireland." Isn't he the guy who said that? Yeah, I think he is. That gives you an idea. Eventually, in the GPO, they decided we can't do anything more here. They surrendered unconditionally. They did read a proclamation declaring Ireland a nation. That's an interesting document, a bit heavy reading. I think if you Google, I could find it here and read it, but I think if you Google 1916 Ireland proclamation, you would get it anyway. And it kind of sets out the principles. It was more an idealistic notion than a practical military action that it was 1916. And all the leaders were executed by Britain within a month, I'd say. Yeah, within a few weeks, because Easter was the end of April at that stage, that year. And on the 6th of May, I think the execution started and followed on from that. And that, because Britain, if you want to say, lost the head and went executing all the leaders, it was a fairly severe punishment for what they did. England lost support worldwide, and they just had to, they were going to execute more people, the people, the supporters, as opposed to who were following the leaders, but that didn't happen. And I think the home rule became more a reality, or if it wasn't home rule, which was diluted down, we actually ended up after the War of Independence. There was fighting continued, even though the War of Independence didn't start until 1919. There was really fighting continuously from 1916 on. And then in Michael Collins, you might have heard of the name Michael Collins, he and Arthur Griffith went over to England with others to negotiate a settlement. I think